On the evening of Friday in March 2012, 18-year-old Oksana Makar from the village of Luch, formerly Krasny Luch, a former military town that housed a military radar station during Soviet times, came to the center of Mykolaiv to the Rybka Cafe, bar on Dzerjinsky Street to celebrate International Women's Day. She had been to the cafe several times before, sometimes with friends, and the barmaid recognized her. According to the bartender, Oksana drank only a can of beer and a carton of juice. Around 10:00 p.m., several young men who had also been there several times entered the cafe. They sat down at a table next to Oksana and she joined them. They offered her alcohol, which made her so drunk that she had to be escorted out of the cafe. Oksana and her mother later stated that she had been given a sleeping pill. The barmaid also reported that, according to residents of the city, a substance had been slipped into Oksana's drink, which she was unable to resist. Since Oksana was very drunk, the men offered to accompany her to the apartment of their mutual acquaintance, Maxim, a high-ranking official in Mykolaiv. Until the end of 2011, he was the director of the municipal company Teploenergo and had tried unsuccessfully for about a year to start a relationship with Oksana. In the apartment, the young woman felt very uncomfortable and fell asleep. The apartment owner and two guests, Maxim 26, Artem 26, and Yevgeny 23, took advantage of the young woman's helplessness. However, the woman regained consciousness and desperately resisted, screaming. The neighbors heard the loud screams but did not call the police. One of the perpetrators, Krasnoshchik, began choking the woman with his hands. On March 14, 2012, a video of Krasnoshchik's interrogation was posted on YouTube, where he took the blame. He stated that Oksana fought back desperately, screamed, and flailed, saying she wouldn't calm down, so he decided to strangle her. Although he was convinced he had killed the woman, Krasnoshchik nevertheless had sexual intercourse with her. Afterward, he and Pogosyan left to find a place where they planned to take the body. When they returned, the woman was still breathing, and Krasnoshchik strangled her again, this time with a cable. They then wrapped the woman in a blanket and pillowcase, and the three of them, Krasnoshchik, Pogosyan, and Przyjashnuk, carried her to the grounds of an abandoned polyclinic construction site. Upon leaving the entrance to the building, Krasnoshchik dropped the body on the ground, but the woman didn't make a sound. At the construction site, they descended into the basement, dumped the body in a pit, set fire to the garbage around it, and left. However, Krasnoshchik returned to retrieve the pillowcase. Oksana showed no signs of life. On March 21, citing information from police sources, it was revealed that the attack on Oksana Makar had been planned in advance and carefully prepared. In particular, a police source stated that Maxim had unsuccessfully tried to establish a relationship with her. He was deeply hurt that she had rejected him. Despite him being such a rich and influential man, even when he offered her money for a night with him, the motive is still not entirely clear. But it is certain that he wanted revenge on her in the most cruel way possible by overpowering her with force and then killing her. Przyjashnuk found Krasnoshchik on social media, with whom he hatched a criminal plan. On the day of the crime, Przyjashnuk didn't leave his house and made sure as many people as possible saw him to create an alibi. Krasnoshchik and Pogosyan took Oksana to Przyjashnuk's apartment. On the morning of March 10, 2012, Oksana Makar was discovered by a passerby and taken to the regional burn unit of the city's hospital. She had burns on approximately 55% of her body, most of which were 3rd and 4th degree. According to the victim's mother, Tatyana Surovitska, reported on March 12, Oksana was in intensive care. Doctors initially gave her a 2% chance of survival, which later fluctuated to 50%. The doctors said they had never seen anything like this in 30 years of practice. Usually, they said, people with such burns die within 2 to 3 hours. Her mother said that Oksana had a 55% chance of burns, calling her only child and stating she would give anything, including her skin and kidneys, just so she could live. On March 12, Oksana had her right hand amputated. A camera crew from the Russian television channel Prvy Kanal offered to fly Oksana to a Moscow clinic for treatment. However, the attending physician Vladimir Moroz stated that the patient's condition did not allow for transport to either Moscow or Kiev. By March 14, more than 150 residents of Mykolaiv donated blood for the injured woman. By March 15, Oksana Makar was in an artificial coma and was connected to a ventilator. From the first day of the incident, doctors in Mykolaiv were advised by colleagues from Kiev, including lecturer Vladimir Sigankov. Police posted a guard outside the young woman's room. The head of the Donetsk Burn Center, Emil Fistel, who arrived in Mykolaiv on March 16, decided to transfer Oksana Makar to the Donetsk Burn Center for treatment. She underwent surgery that same day and was transferred to Donetsk. On March 16, she was prepared for a skin transplant at the Donetsk Burn Center. On March 18, Oksana was diagnosed with pneumonia caused by hypothermia, as she had been lying on the street for 10 hours. On March 19, after further surgical treatment of the wounds, it became clear that Oksana's condition was very serious. On March 22, Oksana Makar underwent surgery to save her leg. Skin was transplanted from her hip to the exposed hip joint. Oksana's dead tissue was removed and replaced with gel dressings simulating human skin. On Thursday, March 29, severe pulmonary hemorrhage occurred, which, combined with severe emaciation, cerebral edema, and sepsis, led to cardiac arrest. Resuscitation efforts lasted more than 40 minutes but were unsuccessful, and at 7:30 a.m., doctors pronounced Oksana Makar dead. Oksana was buried in a white wedding dress, as is customary at the funerals of young women in Ukraine, and laid to rest in a white coffin on March 31, 2012, at the Shevchenko Village Cemetery, near the monument to the heroes of the Great Patriotic War. During the funeral service, a woman in a black headscarf addressed Oksana, asking her to greet her daughter Lena in heaven, stating that her mother would never forget her, and explaining through tears that her daughter Lena was just as disfigured. She lamented that while the beasts that attacked Oksana were caught, her daughter's murderers were never found. About 500 people attended the funeral, including many children and teenagers. Buses were arranged from Mykolaiv. The funeral expenses were covered by the local government. Present were the mayor of Mykolaiv, Volodymyr Chaika, a regional representative, and the deputy governor. The governor was absent, possibly because he had clashed with the organizers of the rallies in support of her at the beginning of her treatment. The funeral was organized by people who had also organized the rally in Oksana's honor, including Yuri Krulov, the leader of the Society Against Lawlessness group, which had been founded in support of Oksana. At her mother's request, the press was denied any comment during these days, although most of the central television channels in Ukraine and Russia attended the funeral with camera crews. Ukrainian President Yanukovych sent an official message of condolence expressing his sincere condolences to the family and friends of the young woman whose life was prematurely taken by a brutal crime. Oksana Makar was born in June 1993 in the settlement of Luch, Jaffa-Nevi district in the Mykolaiv region. Oksana's family was not considered wealthy in the settlement. Oksana's mother, Tetiana Romanovna Surovitska, was, according to some reports, convicted of 3 offenses including robbery. Oksana's biological father, Sergei Igorevich Makar, from whom Tetiana separated after the birth of the child because of his jealousy and alcohol abuse, also had 3 previous convictions for theft and dealing in illegal substances. After separating from Oksana's father, Tetiana met a man from the Kherson region and moved in with him with her daughter. After Tetiana was sentenced to prison in Kherson for robbery, little Oksana was taken in by her maternal grandparents, who continued to live in the Luch settlement. There, Oksana began first grade. According to the parents of Oksana's former classmates, she searched her classmates' school bags and once stole the teacher's wallet from her bag. However, The villagers claimed that Oksana was a good and kind girl, though no one took serious care of her upbringing. When the girl entered 3rd grade, her grandfather decided to send Oksana to the Shirokolonivka Special School, a boarding school, where she was admitted on May 25, 2003. According to the teachers at the boarding school, Oksana had a mild mental disability. She was not particularly good at studying but participated in artistic activities. During her stay at the boarding school, Oksana made several escape attempts but was returned each time. However, the teachers point to Oksana's impulsiveness and conflict proneness, as well as her generosity, noting she shared sweets and apples with others. After her release from prison, Oksana's mother, who had remarried and taken her husband's surname, took her daughter in. According to the deceased's grandmother, Oksana returned to school after 6th grade and still worked. Some media outlets reported that Oksana earned her living through prostitution. However, this was categorically denied by both Oksana's mother and several other sources. It was also proven in court that Oksana never engaged in prostitution. Maxim Przyjaźnik was born on May 12, 1988. He was adopted by the Przyjaźnik family. Lyudmila Alexandrovna, born in 1953, worked as the head of the administration in the Mykolaiv region before being dismissed and retiring in 2010, and her husband, Vladimir Petrovich Przyjaźnik, born in 1952, worked as the first deputy chairman of the district council and retired in 2009. Maxim Przyjaźnik was a member of the district election commission of the city of Mykolaiv for the United Center Party in the 2010 local elections. In the 2010 local elections, Przyjaźnik was also a confidant of the candidate for mayor of Mykolaiv, Vitaly Voronov, the chairman of the United Center Party in Mykolaiv. Maxim Przyjaźnik studied history and law at the history faculty of the Mykolaiv Pedagogical Institute in 2006. During his studies, his adoptive parents bought him an apartment in Mykolaiv. The court revealed that Przyjaźnik had a relationship with a student at his institute but left her when she became pregnant. Witnesses testified that he brought Oksana to his apartment. In 2006, Maxim was appointed to a high-ranking position as director of the municipal company Teploenergo, part of the Mykolaiv city administration, and worked there until the end of 2011. The company was the main supplier of hot water to schools, hospitals, and residential buildings in Mykolaiv. Maxim Przyjaźnik planned and organized the rape and murder of Oksana Makar in advance. On March 10, 2012, a passerby named Oleg Nida heard moaning. His car wouldn't start in the morning, so he decided to walk to work. He heard moaning at an abandoned construction site of a polyclinic in the center of Mykolaiv and called the police at 8:20 a.m. The police arrived literally 4 minutes later, 2 young police officers in a Vila 107. They found Oksana in a pit of burnt garbage. 4 police cars arrived within 20 minutes. However, the ambulance took 40 minutes, even though the hospital is literally next to the crime scene. The police pulled Oksana from the pit. She couldn't free herself. She got up but immediately fell back to the ground from the pain in her burned feet. She was able to speak and named the men who had tried to kill her. Reportedly, she was taken to the hospital completely naked. The attending physician, Alexander Chebotarev, said that it took a long time to lie on coals to get the burns so deep. Oksana's mother, Tetyana Surovitska, lived and worked in Kyiv for the past few years. Her mother learned that Oksana was dying on March 11 from her older sister, a doctor at the Darzhinsky Military Hospital in Mykolaiv. On March 11 at 6:00 a.m., Oksana's mother was in the hospital room with her. The police's actions during the first days of the investigation, and in particular the fact that 2 suspects were released in spite of travel bans, were heavily criticized in the Ukrainian media. According to media reports, those released in spite of travel bans were so-called majors, children of high-ranking figures. For this reason, there were widespread allegations that they might be evading their responsibilities. In particular, it was pointed out that one of the suspects, released under conditions, was the son of the former head of the district state administration, and the second was allegedly the son of a former high ranking prosecutor's office official. However, the information about the second suspect was later refuted by the investigating authorities. In the following days and weeks, the media reported extensively on Oksana's treatment. Various versions of the crime, rallies and protests, and later on the victim's funeral. The case received widespread attention in Ukraine and beyond. In interviews, the victim's mother, Tetiana Surovitska, suggested that her connections to the media had helped publicize the case, stating that it helped that people close to her worked in television, and the events became public, so people gathered in the streets to protest. On March 12 and 13, the addresses of Pryaznyuk, Pogosyan, and Krasnoshchak, as well as the web addresses of Pryaznyuk and Pogosyan's VKontakte pages, were published on many internet forums. On the morning of March 13, Pryaznyuk deleted his VKontakte page. Pogosyan's page showed that he had visited it the same day. On March 14, a website was launched in support of Oksana Makar. Numerous groups and communities were created on the social networks VKontakte and Facebook, through which rallies were organized. On March 13, Tetiana Surovitska recorded a short video message, which was posted on YouTube the same day. The mother reported that her daughter had been conscious the entire time, but that the prosecutor's office and the police had not conducted an investigation or conducted a medical examination. On March 14, a video of Krasnoshchik being interrogated by police was posted on YouTube. 2 days later, the Minister of the Interior commissioned an investigation into the reasons for the video's publication. Also on March 14, a report by Oleg Nida was posted on YouTube, describing the circumstances under which Oksana Makar had been found. On the evening of March 10, the police arrested the 3 rapists identified by Oksana. However, on the morning of March 11, 2 of them, Pryaznyuk and Pogosyan, were released in violation of an exit ban. On March 12, information about this crime reached the Mykolaiv internet forums, where a lively discussion ensued. An initiative group was formed, which spent the entire night of March 12-13 writing posters and setting up puppets of the criminals. On the morning of March 13, several dozen residents of Mykolaiv gathered for the first rally in front of the Mykolaiv Regional Prosecutor's office. Another protest took place in Cathedral Square after the dolls were burned and the media reported on the incident. On March 13, police again arrested Pryaznyuk and Pogosyan. They were remanded in custody. On March 15, the largest rally in support of Oksana Makar took place in Mykolaiv's Central Square. The square was packed with people. The press estimated the number of attendees at between 2,000 and 9,000. On March 15, it was announced that on March 10, 18-year-old Alexandra Popova, who had been found unconscious in the park, had been admitted to the Mykolaiv Emergency Hospital. According to the chief physician, Alexandra's condition was no better than Oksana's. At the March 15 rally in Lenin Square, calls were made to support not only Oksana but also Alexandra. On March 15, rallies against the lawlessness and in support of Oksana's city also took place in Kyiv, Odessa, and Kharkiv. On March 16, a protest in Lviv under the slogan, "Beware Majors," took place in front of the district prosecutor's office building in support of Oksana. Activists from the Femin movement also held a topless protest in front of the prosecutor general's office building on March 15, demanding the harshest punishment for the perpetrators. Oksana's tragedy was covered by many news sites around the world and by almost all major media outlets. In light of the public outcry, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych instructed Prosecutor General Viktor Shanka to conduct a full and impartial investigation into the crime. On March 13, criminal proceedings were initiated against 2 detainees under Article 152, Paragraph 3 of the Criminal Code. Criminal proceedings were initiated against the third under Article 2.9 and Article 152, Paragraph 3. That same day, the victim Oksana gave a statement to the investigator, and a forensic examination was conducted. According to her mother, Oksana remembered almost everything that had happened to her that evening She reported that they began to gain her attention when she threatened the men with calling the police. The crime scene, Maxim Przyjaźniak's apartment, was not examined until a week after the crime, and only then did investigators find the first physical evidence, used condoms. Since medical examination of Oksana's swabs revealed no traces of secretions, the suspect, Pogosyan, claims he did not have sexual intercourse with Oksana. On April 1, Vasily Varenik, the head of the main prosecutor's office of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, announced that the investigation into the murder of Oksana Makar had been completed, and that the detainee had been charged with 2 crimes under Part 2 of Article 115 and Part 4 of Article 152 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine, which is intentional murder committed with particular cruelty, combined with ill treatment by prior agreement with a group of persons. Already after Oksana Makar's death, there were media reports that the prosecutor's office had not conducted an official identification of the persons suspected of Oksana Makar during the 20 days that Oksana was still alive after the crime, as required by Article 174 of the Criminal Procedure Code. On May 13, 2012, police took Oksana's mother, Tetiana Surovitska, under protection after receiving threats. The first court hearing took place on June 12, 2012. The indictment states in particular that the 3 defendants, aware of the irreversibility of the situation, when Oksana already had traces of strangulation and visible bruises on her body, began, with the intention of covering up the traces of the crime, pursuing the goal of killing her by burning the body in order to prevent its identification. Yevgeny Krasnoshek and Maxim Przyjaźniak have partially admitted their guilt, while Artem Pogosyan has refused to admit his guilt. In early October 2012, the prosecutor of the Chief Prosecutor's Office found in court that the lawyers for Oksana Makar's killers were deliberately dragging out the trial. On October 11, it was announced that the court had completed its investigation into Oksana Makar's case and scheduled closing arguments for the end of October. On November 27, 2012, the Mykolaiv Central Court found the defendants guilty on all counts and sentenced them as follows: Yevgeny Krasnoshek to life imprisonment, Maxim Przyjaźniak to 15 years in prison, and Artem Pogosyan to 14 years in prison. However, Oksana's mother disagrees with the verdict, considering it too lenient and believing that 2 of the defendants, including Przyjaźniak, should also receive life sentences. According to his lawyer, his client's crimes should be reclassified. In December 2012, they appealed the verdict to the Mykolaiv Regional Court of Appeal. The appeal hearing was scheduled for May 30, 2013. On that day, the Mykolaiv Regional Court of Appeal dismissed all appeals and left the verdict unchanged. Lawyers for both sides announced they would continue to appeal the verdict. On August 9, 2013, Oksana's mother, through her lawyer, filed an appeal against the verdict of the Mykolaiv Regional Court of Appeal with the Supreme Specialized Court of Civil and Criminal Cases of Ukraine, demanding that Przyjaźniak and Pogosyan be sentenced to life imprisonment. However, in 2014, the court upheld the verdict against Przyjaźniak and Pogosyan. The deputy head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs Investigative Department in the Mykolaiv region, militia officer Vadim Pavlenko, who had released the 2 murder suspects immediately after their arrest in violation of the regulations, was dismissed from his post. However, he was reinstated before the end of the trial. Human rights activist Yaroslav Duniev stated that 2 months ago, it was loudly announced that the guilty parties had been released, and now everyone sees how much those promises are worth, as the only measure was a demotion. According to lawyer Mykolaiv, the release was a public demand. The name Oksana Makar subsequently became synonymous with several similar cases. The term Oksana Makar syndrome even emerged for cases of abuse and subsequent burning. In the summer of 2013, a crime reminiscent of Oksana's tragedy was committed in the Mykolaiv region, which sparked protests throughout Ukraine. The crime in Verdievka, where 2 militants kidnapped, abused, and attempted to kill a young woman while the local authorities covered for them, was committed in the same way. Thanks for watching and take care.